Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Saturday segment with Jeff and Jillian. I'm Jillian, that's Jeff. This is Last Life Ever, and today Jeff is going to talk about how he has no bad days, what that actually means. Good morning, Jeffrey.
Oh, good morning, Jillian. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Tell us about your philosophy of no bad days.
I don't have them. That's the philosophy. It's not that complicated, really. You just don't have them.
Oh, and that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Great Saturday segment. No, so seriously, people ask me this all the time because I'm getting sort of famous, like a little famous about being the guy who doesn't have bad days. And now people come up to me and they say, come on, you must really have bad days. Like you're probably just not, going out in public on bad days or something. And the answer is I don't. And it's true because I talk to you like every day. And for like a year now, we've talked like every day. How many bad days have I had in the last year?
0.0.
0.0. That's correct. Although it might be like 0.0001, just to be clear, because it doesn't count if it's not a whole bad day. I mean, you can have bad moments. That's actually the point, right? Good and bad stuff happens to everyone every single day.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm kind of getting more into this philosophy because at the end of the day, I always think too, you can always start over again tomorrow. Like there's always an opportunity to start over again tomorrow. And I think actually it's funny because the one like buzzword I always kind of abhorred was self-love. I always thought that was kind of a goofy thing. But I think there's an element of not having any bad days. Committing to yourself is a sign of self-love. Like you love yourself enough to know that you're not going to have any bad days.
That's not how I think of it, but there's nothing wrong with it. That's the great part about it, right? Is that whatever works for you. And so the way I look at it is good and bad stuff happens every day. It just does. And the trick is to minimize the bad stuff and embrace the good stuff. This is actually no different than a lot of our guests on our show have said, right? So we had Mike Pearson on, for example, right? And he talks about finding positive in the negative, right? Find three positive things for every negative thing that happens.
Well,
and I was
hold on a second. I want to talk about who Mike Pearson was in case people didn't see that episode. Mike Pearson was on our Memorial Day show, and he had his son who had actually died in battle in one of the worst battles in recent history. And by recent history, I mean in the last,
he died in Afghanistan, and it was a terrible battle. Mm-hmm. Lots of people died in that battle. There's a lot of trauma there. And Mike said he couldn't move on. He couldn't finish grieving until he found three positive things that came from his son's death. Yeah. And I was like, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And listen, I'm not saying that when you find out your kid dies, it's going to be like your favorite day of your life, because that's clearly not going to be the case, right? I'm sure that would set most people off onto a course of having a bad day. I don't know how I would react because I haven't been in that situation, but I do know lots of really traumatic and bad things have happened to me, and I haven't had bad days. And the reason is, and I think of this, another one of our guests, Diana Geip, right? She came on the show and talked about how she gave up drinking, right? And how she's been sober for many, many years now. And she mentioned that the coronavirus was really hard for some of her like newly sober friends, right? Really, really difficult for newly sober friends, because if you've been sober 6 months and then all this stuff happens, the trauma and the stress make it very difficult. But for her, it wasn't difficult because she identifies herself as a person who doesn't drink. 11, 12 years at that point of not drinking. And it's not even something you consider. For her identity is, right? And that's kind of what you're saying with the self-love. If you identify yourself as a person like I do that doesn't have bad days, when bad stuff happens, your brain says, no, what's going on? How do you react to this? How do you deal with it? What kind of things are there? And this is the second thing that I think is important. So good and bad stuff happens every day. And then there's this thing called the Baader-Meinhof effect. Have you heard of this?
No.
Well, you should have, because I told you about it before. but that's okay.
I mean, the whole thing sounds familiar, but I can't remember it. I don't know why.
So the Bader-Meinhof effect is the same thing that happens to you when you get a new car, right? So Jillian goes out and buys a new Honda Civic because she's really stylish like that. And by the way, Honda, you're welcome to sponsor us because we know how great your cars are.
They're the helpful Honda people. They should sponsor us.
They should, yeah. They're exactly on brand for us. So Jillian goes out and buys herself a new Honda Civic, or really Honda gives us each one because we're so awesome. And that didn't happen, just to be clear. But then all of a sudden you start seeing Honda Civics everywhere. Everyone experiences this. They get a new car, and then all of a sudden they're seeing that same car everywhere. That's because your subconscious mind, your reticular activating system, starts recognizing them because it's familiar to you. Your mind finds what's familiar. And I think that's what Diana was getting at when she said, like, she didn't reach for a bottle. Right. She reached for her support mechanisms and the things that she had. And that's what happened to me, right? I got diagnosed with leukemia. That sucked. If that had happened to me 3 days after I gave up bad days, I would have had a bad day. I know that for sure because it's not easy, right? But it was 11 years of consecutive good days at that point. Like, it's been 25 years for me now, right? Like, I was 17 when I gave up bad days. So when I was 30 and diagnosed with leukemia, right, 13 years into the no bad days, I wasn't going to have a bad day because my mind didn't allow me to believe in that possibility.
Do you think that you survived leukemia because of this philosophy? Because I know in your case and with your leukemia, you should have died.
Well, maybe. I'm also really lucky. I was diagnosed at the right time. If I'd been diagnosed a couple years earlier, I would have almost certainly died. Because the type of leukemia I have was essentially like a 95% death rate. They call it a 5% survival rate at 5 years, but I consider that a death rate. That's like not good odds.
Fair.
But now the same leukemia has a very high survival rate. It's the 5-year survival rate is in the high 90s. So I don't think that, my mindset necessarily solved that for me, right? Because there are new treatment protocols that came out about a year before I was diagnosed that are like miracle drugs, and I take them every day. It's not like I just willed this stuff away. I still believe in science, right? But I do think that staying positive really did help me in the recovery, and it definitely helped me in the second thing that happened to me, which was honestly much more difficult than getting diagnosed with leukemia, because the truth is anybody can get sick. Not your fault. You don't have any control over it. I mean, unless it's, like diabetes because you're fat like me or something, then you do have control over it. But you don't have control over leukemia. It just sort of happens. It's just like the luck of the draw kind of thing. It's like winning the lottery, only in reverse, right? And but when I went bankrupt a year and a half later, I knew that there were things I could have done differently, right? Mm-hmm. I could have started my investing career sooner before I got sick, for example, and I wouldn't have necessarily gone bankrupt because I would have had other income. I couldn't work, and I had a business that was falling apart. That's why I went bankrupt. But I also knew deep down that if I had started investing like when I was 19, when I first started thinking about investing in real estate, that I would have been in a completely different spot. So I had to take more responsibility mentally for that, and that was much more challenging. But this is where that Bader-Meinhof effect comes in. I'm sitting in front of a bankruptcy trustee, a trustee, by the way, who I was terrified of. The way this stuff works in bankruptcy, it's sort of luck of the draw, kind of like what judge you get, it's what trustee you get. And I drew the trustee that I was afraid to have, the one that was always nitpicking everything, always terrified all of the people that went in front of him. And of course, I knew this in advance, and I knew him because I was doing bankruptcy work because I was a bankruptcy attorney. So I was like, oh, this is really bad. And I sat down in front of him. And the first thing you do in these hearings is you swear an oath to tell the truth. And then they start grilling you about everything in your life. It's very invasive and very uncomfortable. And I sat down in front of him, and I was steeling myself for it. And I really did think that was a bad day. Like, I was like, oh man, this day sucks. This is going to be terrible. And he looked at me and he said, Jeff, I'm sorry to see you here. That's all he said. And then we started. And he wasn't nicer to me than that. He did his job the way he normally did it. But my mind said, holy cow, this guy feels sorry for me.
Yeah.
and that was enough that was the one little ray of goodness that I needed to make sure that that day was still a good day for me. And then, you know what, it turned into a good day. Like I got this tremendous relief afterwards. I didn't have this like crippling amount of debt. I mean, I was still upside down, student loans don't go away in bankruptcy. And so I had that debt, and I didn't have any assets, obviously, because, we just went bankrupt, but it didn't feel as much pressure. And I felt sort of light and happy, and I was recovering from leukemia, so I felt healthier than I had in a long time, and I became able to continue to stay focused on being positive, and that was the hard one. I mean, that day was hard, but the point is, and why I tell people about that is not like, oh, feel sorry for me. It's if I can go through diagnosis of leukemia and not have a bad day, if I can go through bankruptcy as a bankruptcy attorney and not have a bad day, then whatever's going on in your life, you can do it too. It's just look for the positive. It's like what Mike said, right? Just find the 3 or 4 positive things in whatever negative is going around. And then there's another quote I really like, which is the moment you accept complete responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you can change anything in your life.
Wow.
And that's, I think, Hal Elrod. I'm not sure. I that's where I recall reading it. But the quote stuck with me really the deep.
Moment you take responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you can change it.
Change anything in your life. Yeah.
That's very cool. So what do you like? So, but let's put that in context for a second. Right. And I'll take out something really, really painful for 2 people that I know who are most likely not watching this and will not watch this. But I know 2 families actually who lost 2-year-olds in the last month and a half due to accidents. Both were lost due to accidents. One was hit by a car, hit and run, and the other one drowned in a pool. And how do they take, I guess the question is, and maybe you don't know the answer, how does someone take responsibility for that?
Well, so those examples are new to me, but people ask me this question actually relatively frequently. XYZ terrible thing happened.
Right.
Wouldn't you have a bad day if that happened? Or how do you take responsibility for that? Right. That's essentially the same question. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think about this a lot, actually, right? When I was climbing Kilimanjaro, right, the tallest mountain in Africa, I'm climbing the mountain, I'm struggling and I'm frustrated and I want to quit. And I see these guys that are like porters, right? And they have like a giant things balanced on their head. They're wearing sweaters instead of like, $500 worth of winter gear like me. And they're just kind of strolling up the mountain. And I'm looking at these guys as they sort of practically run by me, and I'm thinking, man, their life must be so much better than mine, right? But
how interesting is that?
Yeah, but then think about this. These are people that are paid like $10 a day to carry like, crazy white people's gear up a mountain every day. Their life is not better than mine. It's right. Actually, by my standard, it would be objectively worse, right? But the perspective I had at that moment was, look how easy it is for that guy to climb up this mountain.
Wow.
But it's really not. He's doing this because his kids need food or whatever, right? And that's how you have to think about these really hard things. Like some people look at my situation and they say, oh man, if I was diagnosed with leukemia, I could never have had a good day that day. And that's kind of how I feel. Like if my 2-year-old child died in an accident, I don't know how I would have a good day. Right. But I do know this. I think I probably would, because I've gone through really hard stuff. But I wouldn't ever fault anyone. Jillian, if one of your children dies, and let's hope that never happens, right? Well, I mean, it will eventually, but like hopefully it's a long, long time from now when
after
you're gone,
yeah,
right?
For
and
sure.
They're super old. But if one were to die in an accident and you had a bad day, I would not call you up and be like, Jillian, you're supposed to have good days.
Yeah, you better not.
Yeah,
you will have no more days after that.
Right. That's my point. Like, you can't judge people if they have bad days, because you don't, and for all they might be frustrated and irritated and upset, but they might still be having a good day too, right? I mean, obviously, I don't think anyone's going to go, oh, my kid died today, it's the best day of my life. I mean, I get that, right? Like that's never, ever going to happen. And, you know, if you had called me up the day I was diagnosed, which would have been weird since I didn't know you then, but if you had, I wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, this is my favorite day ever. I just wouldn't. But I also, when I was in the hospital that night, my brother came in and he said to me, I bet today's a bad day. Like, it was like he wanted to like test me or verify or whatever. And I was like, no, it's really not. Like, it's a bad minute. Like, when I was diagnosed, that sucked. Right. But the stuff that happened before that in the day was actually pretty good. Yeah. I had a nice day.
Yeah.
You know, and then the next day I get to the hospital. I mean, I was still in the hospital. I stayed overnight in the hospital. The next day, I don't even know if I've told you this before. This nurse comes in to the room, right? And she looks at me and she says, oh my God, Jeff, I'm so sorry to see you here. And it turns out she was my babysitter from when I was like 10 years old and younger. And I hadn't seen her in like 20 years. And I looked at her and I was like, Shelly, I'm so glad to be here.
Oh, wow.
Because I thought, not because I'm weird and because I've had, you know, over a decade at that point of training my brain to look for positive, I thought, this is so great. I get to see Shelly again. She was one of my favorite babysitters. Like, everyone else would be like, oh my God, I'm dying. And I'm like, oh, look, it's Shelly. This is amazing. Right? And I really think this stuff does happen to you. Like, you're gonna find good stuff in every day. Even a day that something really terrible and traumatic happens to you, there's gonna be some good and some bad. Yeah. And if you train your mind, you know, and you look for the Honda Civic, you're gonna be okay.
Look for the Honda Civic. What can we get? Like, you know, Honda would be great, and Honda, I will not turn down your sponsorship of this show.
But Tesla would be better, right?
But yeah.
I knew where you're going with that. Like, Elon, since we know you're a giant fan of the show, we'll be happy to test drive your Tesla truck.
He doesn't miss a live.
He never misses a live. He's watching right now. And Elon, if you would like us to drive around Tesla trucks painted up with the Last Life Ever logo as a way to advertise your trucks, we'll do it for you.
Yeah, because you need the help. And Jillian and Jeff are there.
No one knows who you are, but everyone knows who Last Life Ever is. Because you know what? Here's the thing. Lots of people actually do know what Tesla is, right? Lots of people do. But everyone has only one life to live.
This is true.
Everyone is in their last life ever.
Everyone is in their last life ever.
We are 100% brand saturation.
Yeah, brand saturation. Jeff, before we say adieu, what are you doing this weekend? Anything exciting?
Well, I'm doing this live with my friend Jillian. No, you know what? I have very little planned. I've been in an all-weekend event. Well, for a couple of days, I've been doing an event where I've been presenting at various points during the event. So I'll probably have one more of those presentations to do.
What time? I thought you already presented.
I did. Yeah, I did. I'm on a panel.
Oh, what time?
I think it's right after yours. Like, literally, like, immediately following your presentation.
I think I'm at 2:00 Pacific. I'm also on that event. And I will be at, I think, 2:00 Pacific, right?
I don't know. I think so. I don't have the schedule in front of me. I'm later than that, so maybe it's not immediately after yours. Mine's like 5 or 5:30 Eastern, something like that.
Yeah, so that would make sense. 5:30 Eastern is...
It might be 6:30 Eastern. I really don't know. It's on my calendar. I don't have it in front of me. But the point is, I have a panel later. We're digressing. I'll be doing that panel. It's a mindset panel. So I'll be talking about this very topic.
Yeah. And honestly, if you haven't attended this event, it's the Real Estate Rocks event. Just look for it. I think you can get in for free, right?
Yeah, they have free tickets if you watch it live. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to see Jeff and I speak on our various expertise, you can.
That's right. And we'll put a link in the show notes here when we get done.
Well, anyhow, everybody have a wonderful day. Don't have a bad day. There's no reason to. Jeff,
I'm not going to. Listen,
I'm not going to have a bad day either. I woke up with a spring in my step, ready to go, ready to seize the day, had my coffee, did my rosary, looked up, I want to redesign my bathroom. So I looked up bathrooms online and types of bathrooms designs I wanted to do. And then I started cleaning my office here.
I noticed that the arrangement was different behind you.
Yeah. You know what? I was feeling a little, obviously these are fake walls back here. And I was feeling a little claustrophobic with them so close. So I'm moving out the shelf and just rearranging it. And I'm going to make this a little yoga space.
Awesome.
As well. So
I want to like want to circle back to our topic just for 1 second, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So I have a story that I think is actually really relevant. So, I was talking about how like it's sort of like a muscle almost, like you build it up over time. It gets easier the longer you do it.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that at first. But most of this stuff I didn't realize at first. That's how I know it's not that hard. Because I didn't like go, okay, I'm going to give up bad days and I'm never going to have a bad day again the rest of my life. Like when I was 17, that would be cool if I was that smart, but I'm not. I just was like, I'm young and healthy and I was kind of depressed. I think I broke up with my girlfriend or, whatever. And I was like, you know what? Today's a good day. It's going to be okay. And I just said that over and over and over and over again. Right. And I started putting together a string of good days just by like actively saying today's a good day to myself out loud by myself. I'd wake up in the morning. I'd look in the mirror. I'd say today's a good day like 10 times. I get in my car, I'd say today's a good day like 10 times. I just kept doing it over and over again. And then one day I walked into a 7-Eleven and the guy behind the counter says to me, how you doing today? And I say, I never have bad days. I didn't think about it. I didn't plan it. It just sort of came out from inside of me because I had changed my mindset.
It's the channel. We talked about this before, and this is actually based in science that you have to create the channel in your brain. And if you don't create the channel, and that's why bad habits are hard to break.
Impossible.
Because the channel is like, it's like dug in, right?
Yeah. But good habits are like that too, in a way, right? Yeah. So the habit of having good days becomes easier and easier and easier over time. And so like I've been talking to you about having good days and not having bad days for a long time. And I know that you haven't quite got to where you never have bad days.
No, I wouldn't say that. It's not that. It's that I'm also in a space right now of being mindful of actual underlying feelings. I'm just in a different space. So it's not that I haven't adopted the philosophy.
You can be mindful of underlying feelings. Like I have periods of time during my day where I'm frustrated, where I'm agitated. I do think that when you accept fully that you're going to have a good day, it makes it easier to deal with those things. Right.
Yeah.
And it's not a function of, ignoring them, because you can ignore stuff. It doesn't go away. Right. Like that doesn't solve the problem, but it's a function of putting them in their place. That's where that quote about being able to accept that you have responsibility for everything in your life comes in, circling back on that. It's like bad stuff happens. It may or may not be your fault. It may be bankruptcy. It may be leukemia. Leukemia is not my fault, right? No right. About that. But I still have to accept responsibility for the fact that I have leukemia. I'm going to have to say it's my fault I have leukemia.
Yeah,
I have to accept responsibility and say, now I can, how am I going to react to this? Because it's already happened. Like, same with your friends who lost children, right? It's done.
Yeah.
It sucks, but it's over. You can't change it. So you have to say, now how do I deal with it? You can be like Mike Pearson and respond to losing a child by starting a charity and raising money to help, disabled and wounded and traumatized veterans, right? Traumatized veterans. I mean, that's one way to respond. Another way is to like start drinking every day until you die. Right? Like you have a choice, and you can't bring your kid back. It's not possible. No. I can't go back to before I had leukemia, before I went and went bankrupt. I wish I could, but I can move forward in the most positive possible way and do things like come up with the idea of Last Life Ever, which I wouldn't have done if it wasn't for that. So that's a positive that came from all this stuff that happened. And I get to know Jillian because of that. If I didn't have
I know. No. And I get that. That's not lost on me. And quite frankly, I really don't have bad days. That's the funny thing. I just haven't gotten into the, I don't say I had a bad day today. Those words usually, generally speaking, do not come out of my mouth. My thing is trying to incorporate saying I never have bad days into the other stuff that I'm working on right now with me personally. I have a lot, some of you might not know this, but I have a lot of anger in me right now. I'm super angry at a lot of people right now.
Is it because I gave you carnations?
Yeah. I was angry at Jeff because he sent me carnations after I told him they were ugly and gross.
I didn't actually send you carnations. It was just a photo of carnations.
I know, you didn't even send them to me. You just sent me a photo of them, which I think is even more insulting. But no, I mean, if I'm being honest, and the reason why this is like so something I'm working on is because I'm trying to work on that and recognizing, okay, why am I feeling this way, and letting myself, like we talked about this in a previous, I think, Saturday segment about feeling your feelings and making sure that you don't like bury whatever you're feeling. Cause I did that for a really long time where I would just be like, oh, it's okay. I'm just going to ignore bad behavior by bad people and not do anything about it. And I'm telling you right now, I did that and didn't put up boundaries for many, many years. And it bit me in the butt in the end. And instead of it being like a minor thing, if I had put up boundaries and expressed the way I felt and took action on the way I felt, took responsibility for the way I felt, took responsibility for my circumstances, then at the end result wouldn't have been this huge event that ended up in a lot of, quite frankly, trauma. So, and I know I'm being vague right now, everybody.
It's understandable. We don't have to share every single thing that happened in our life, right?
Yeah.
But the point is no different. This trauma that you're describing is something that's already occurred, right?
Right.
So,
no, you're right. You're right.
So dealing with it in a healthy and productive way is the right decision. So what you're doing is correct.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with what you're doing. And I wasn't trying to pick on you and be like, oh, you don't have bad day or you have bad days. Because like the thing is, 99.9999999% of people in the world have bad days.
Right. No,
probably
here's
a
the
higher
thing.
percentage than that. Hey, I've had bad days. It's just been a while.
To that end, I just want to circle back around. The day everything blew up, like there was an event, and the day the event happened, it was actually a series of events over a couple of days. But quite frankly, that series of events over those couple of days turned out to be awesome for me because I had a newfound freedom and everything turned out, things started happening for me that otherwise would not have happened. Much like, like Jeff, what you're saying, like if you had not gotten leukemia, if you'd not filed for bankruptcy, you never would have gotten into real estate investing. You would have never done Last Life Ever. Like there's similar situations there for me as well. Like if all of these things, if all this, I'll call it stress and trauma or whatever, hadn't happened all at this one time, and not just one time, but hadn't happened, period, this new change for me and these new things that are happening for me wouldn't have happened either.
Yeah, well, and that's it. I mean, we don't control what happens to us. We only control how we react to it.
Right.
And
yeah, go ahead.
That's it. That's the whole point. I mean, if you take nothing else from it, it's that, you don't control what happens to you, only how you react.
Yeah.
And that's why you have good days.
Everybody, I hope you enjoyed this little episode of Saturday segment. If you have any questions for Jeff, you can just, even if you're watching this after the live, you can go ahead and just drop something in the comments and Jeff will be sure
or just join the Facebook group and Last Life Ever private community and send me a message in there. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. We got to get another bracket going. I think it's a bracket time.
Yeah, it's going to be who's going to have a bad day next.
No. You know what we're going to do? I think Richard Robinette suggested we should do horror movies. And I think we're at that stage where we can do
horror movies. Yeah, that's perfect. Everyone knows that It's My Bloody Valentine is the winner. But
I hate horror movies, so I'm not going to do well.
I'm just making that up. It's the only horror movie I could even think of. I also hate horror movies, although the Blair Witch Project should probably.
Okay, I will give you that. The Blair Witch Project was really good. And actually, I was going to say the only horror movie I could probably vote on was like Scream.
I like Scream, though. And I Know What You Did Last Summer is another one that's really fun.
So I want to say, like, I Know What You Did Last Summer. I read that book as like a teenager. And so when the movie came out, I was a little disappointed.
No, see, I didn't read it. So I thought it was really fun. I had this friend who's in Last Life Ever, by the way. Back then, we were friends and we were hanging out a lot. And she watched this movie. And then I was working at 7-Eleven third shift. She goes home. And she calls me at like 3 a.m. at 7-Eleven and is like in a full-on panic because she thinks that someone's in her house after this. And it was actually a coat that she had put on a vacuum cleaner.
Oh my God.
Literally a coat on a vacuum cleaner. She just set a coat on a vacuum cleaner.
Okay, you know what movies creeps me out was when I was 5 and I had nightmares. I don't know even how I ended up watching this movie when I was 5, but was Creepshow.
Oh yeah, that's wrong. Yeah. I was sure you were going to say E.T. because that's creepy if you think about it.
I loved E.T. I saw E.T. at the drive-in when I was 5 years old too.
Well, yeah, I know. We're this
same age.
I was 4.5.
Such a joke. No, you weren't. You were 5 because E.T. was released in the summer.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm still younger than you. I was a young 5.
So E.T. I saw at the drive-in. I don't know how I ended up seeing Creepshow, but I did when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And it creeped me out. And then I saw Creepshow as like a young adult, and I was like, "This stuff is nonsense."
Creepshow really is terrible. It's not good at all.
No.
But I saw Silence of the Lambs in the theater with my grandmother.
Oh,
how weird is that? It's not.
There's so many things to unpack there.
Yeah. Well, the weirdest part about that is my parents went to see it and thought it was really good, and they were like, it was my 14th birthday, I think, right? And my grandmother had this thing. She didn't really like movies, but she always took us out for our birthday, right? Like, and I liked movies. So I was like, let's go to the movies. And she was like, okay, what do you want to see? And I'm like, I don't know. And my mom was like, you should go see Silence of the Lambs. That's a great movie.
What is wrong with your mother?
I don't know. I mean, I wonder that sometimes.
There's even more to unpack here. Keep going.
No, anyway, so we went and saw it. My grandmother, not a fan.
No, I imagine she wasn't.
She was not a fan of the movie. I thought it was great then, too. And it is a great movie. Actually, Thomas Harris's books are very good, too.
No, Silence of the Lambs is a very good movie. You know what movie Derek saw when he was 7 in the theater was Jaws.
Yeah, see, that seems wrong, too.
It is wrong. That's the point.
When you're that young, that stuff terrifies you. Now he probably never wants to go in the ocean again.
No, he loves Jaws. He thinks Jaws is a great movie. He talks about it like it's such a very fond memory of his that he got to see Jaws when he was 7 in the theater.
So he's well adjusted. That's good to know.
I wouldn't say that. Let's not go that far.
No, as far as sharks go. As far as the movie Jaws goes. You know what movie actually really terrified me? And this is, by the way, this stuff we're cutting out of this video when we post it, because this is way off topic. But everyone who's watching, we appreciate you sticking around. And you can comment in the comments what movie terrified you also, so we can start the bracket soon. But the movie that terrified me as a child, I think is silly now and doesn't scare me at all, is Arachnophobia.
Oh, yeah. I that was with John Goodman, right? I never actually saw that movie. I just remember the previews.
I saw it in the theater, and there's this great scene where this is what happens is there's like some kind of super deadly spider that mates with local spiders and produces all these little tiny spiders that are, they're like, $50 size spiders instead of giant spiders, but they're super deadly, and one bite kills you like almost instantly. And there's a scene in the movie where these teenage kids are at a movie, and one of them reaches into the popcorn and a spider bites them on their hand or something. And I was reaching in for popcorn right when that happened.
Ugh.
Yeah, and I was like, oh man, this is terrifying. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you,
I think about it still, like often at the movies. I think of that one scene of the
Okay, I'm going to talk about 2 movies. One is a series, both of them are series that I actually think the people who wrote these movies should be arrested and thrown in jail and never let out. The first one is Saw. The Saw series is disgusting. The fact that you can think of these ways to torture people is very disturbing to me.
I want to pause for a second. The first episode of Saw was actually terrifying, but also really, really well done. The later ones, I agree with you. They just went over the top.
Yeah, it's just like it was disgusting.
That's
there was
like
nothing.
The Hostel ones too.
Like,
right?
Yeah, and I don't know. Like I don't remember what episode I saw or what.
Probably anything after the first one.
No, I don't remember, but Donnie Wahlberg was in it and I watched it for like 2 seconds and I was like, this is disgusting. I can't. And then the second one, The Hills Have Eyes.
So I haven't seen that, so I can't say, but the other one that you should have on the list is Hostel. So
Hostel. I don't know Hostel, but here's a fourth one for you. Human Centipede.
Yeah, I'm not watching that.
No, me neither.
Yeah, I don't even
need to watch it. I know what it's about, and that's enough.
Yeah, it's enough. So the Hostel one, the concept is these college kids go off to some hostel in Eastern Europe, right? And it's actually a place where they get they run into some people at a bar or something, and they're like, hey, we know this great, beautiful place, and you can stay for free or whatever. So they go off to like some farm or whatever, and then they get chained up, and rich people from all around the world come and pay to be able to torture and kill them. It's a terrible movie. Like, how is anyone think that's
disgusting?
Yeah, it's horrible. It's really it's very, very bad. But that's what I think of when I think of like the later Saw. It's just like random torturing and killing. Like I have no interest in that.
No, that's not for me. That's definitely.
And I'll tell you, if I ever get captured and chained up in a hostel and someone's coming to torture and kill me, I might have a bad day.
We're gonna end. Oh my god! Full circle! Yay! All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
I'd be like, look, Jillian came to torture and kill me. At least it's a friend.
Oh my god! I would not. That is not my thing.
No,
everybody, I do not torture and kill people.
When you go to torture and kill people, if you find out it's me, will you please let me go?
Everybody, have a wonderful Saturday and rest your weekend. I'm Jillian Sidoti. That is Jeffrey Holst. And Jeff, what are you going to remind everybody to do?
Not have a bad day.
That and?
Live the very best version of their last life ever.
Bye.